The grand ballroom shimmered under the glow of crystal chandeliers, the polished marble floors reflecting the opulence of the evening. Waiters glided seamlessly between tables, balancing trays of champagne flutes, as the elite of Los Angeles mingled, their laughter and polite conversation filling the room. In the center of it all stood Damian Reed, his tailored tuxedo immaculate, his sharp jawline set with tension. His parents, Arthur and Victoria Reed, flanked him like sentinels, their expressions calm but unyielding. "It's time, Damian," Victoria said, her voice clipped and unwavering. "Elizabeth is perfect for you, and this merger will solidify our family's position for generations." Damian turned to face her, his piercing blue eyes flashing with defiance. "I told you, I won't marry someone I don't love. I'm not a pawn in your corporate games." Arthur crossed his arms, his imposing frame towering over Damian. "Don't be naive, son. Love is a luxury, not a necessity. This is about responsibility." Damian's jaw tightened. "Responsibility to whom? To you? To your empire? What about my life?" Victoria's lips thinned into a hard line. "This isn't just about you, Damian. Think of the company, the family legacy. Elizabeth Whitmore is smart, beautiful, and from a family just as influential as ours. She's the logical choice." Damian's retort died in his throat as Elizabeth herself approached. Her blonde hair was styled to perfection, her designer gown clinging to her like a second skin. She smiled at Damian with practiced ease, though her eyes betrayed a mixture of expectation and boredom. "Damian," Elizabeth said smoothly, "I think everyone's waiting for the big announcement. Shall we?" Damian's pulse quickened, his parents' expectant gazes bearing down on him like a vice. His chest tightened as he glanced around the room, searching for an escape. That's when he saw her. A waitress stood by the far wall, balancing an empty tray against her hip as she adjusted a loose strand of hair that escaped her bun. She was dressed in the standard black and white uniform, but there was something about her, her freckled face, her bright green eyes, that caught Damian's attention. In an instant, desperation became resolve. "I already have someone," Damian blurted, his voice carrying over the hum of the crowd. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" Before anyone could react, Damian strode across the room, his steps purposeful. The waitress, Claire, looked up just as he reached her, confusion flashing across her face. "What are you?" Claire started, but Damian didn't let her finish. He cupped her face with both hands, his touch surprisingly gentle, and kissed her. The room fell silent. Claire froze, her mind racing. She barely registered the sound of gasps and murmurs around her as her tray clattered to the floor. When Damian finally pulled back, a satisfied smirk on his lips, Claire stared at him, stunned. "What the hell was that?" she hissed, pushing him away. "Just go with it," Damian whispered urgently, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "Go with? Are you insane?" Claire demanded, her cheeks flushing with anger. Damian straightened, turning back to the crowd as he wrapped an arm around Claire's waist, holding her firmly in place. "Everyone," he announced, his tone smooth and confident, "I'd like you to meet Claire. She's the woman I've been seeing." Claire's eyes widened, and she opened her mouth to protest, but Damian's hand pressed lightly against her side, a silent plea for her to stay quiet. In the crowd, Victoria's face darkened, and Arthur's brows knitted together in disbelief. Elizabeth's smile faltered, her polished exterior cracking as she looked from Damian to Claire. The whispers grew louder, the guests speculating about the shocking revelation. Claire couldn't take it anymore. She twisted out of Damian's grip and stepped back, her eyes blazing. "You're out of your mind," she said loudly, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "Claire," Damian began, but she held up a hand. "Don't Claire me," she snapped. "I don't know who you think you are, but I am not part of whatever game you're playing." The room went silent again as Claire stormed off, leaving Damian standing in the middle of the ballroom, his confidence shaken. Victoria stepped forward, her voice like ice. "I don't know what you think you're doing, Damian, but this stunt will have consequences." Arthur nodded, his tone low and menacing. "You'd better fix this." Damian didn't respond, his gaze fixed on the door Claire had disappeared through. For the first time in his life, he wasn't thinking about his parents, their expectations, or the empire waiting to be inherited. He was thinking about the fiery waitress who had just turned his life upside down. Claire Bennett wiped her hands on her apron as she finished her shift at the diner, the familiar ache in her feet reminding her of the long hours she'd pulled all week. Her second job at the catering company barely paid enough to keep up with the mounting bills, and the looming deadline for her younger brother Jake's school tuition weighed heavily on her mind. The bell above the diner door jingled, and Claire glanced up to see a sharply dressed man walk in. Her brow furrowed as recognition dawned. It was the guy from last night's gala. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her tone wary as he approached the counter. "Claire, right?" Damien said smoothly, leaning casually against the counter. "Yes, Claire," she said, crossing her arms. "The person you embarrassed in front of an entire ballroom. What do you want?" "I came to apologize," Damien began, his tone unusually sincere. Claire snorted. "Great. Apology accepted. You can leave now." Damien didn't move. "Look, I know last night was unconventional, but I have a proposition for you." "Oh, this should be good," Claire said, rolling her eyes. "What could you possibly offer me that would make up for that stunt?" Damien hesitated, then leaned in slightly. "I need you to pretend to be my girlfriend. Just for 6 months." Claire stared at him, her mouth falling open. "You want me to play your girlfriend? Are you insane?" "Not insane," Damien replied, his voice calm, desperate. "Why would I do that?" Claire asked, incredulous. "Because I'll make it worth your while," Damien said, his blue eyes locking onto hers. "I'll pay off your father's medical debts, cover your brother's tuition, and set up a scholarship fund for him. You can walk away from this with your life changed." Claire's heart skipped a beat at his words. "You don't even know me. Why would you offer me something like that?" "Because I need someone who's not part of my world," Damien said simply. "You don't care about my money or my name, and that makes you perfect. My parents are trying to control my life, and this is the only way I can stop them." Claire looked at him skeptically. "So, you want me to lie to your parents, your friends, and probably half of Los Angeles?" "Pretty much," Damien said with a shrug. "And what's in it for you?" "Freedom," Damien said, his tone sharpening, "and the chance to live my life the way I want, without being forced into a marriage I don't want." Claire shook her head. "This is crazy. I can't just drop everything and be your fake girlfriend." "You wouldn't have to drop everything," Damien countered. "You'd keep your normal life, and I'd only need you at events and family dinners. Think of it as a part-time job with a very generous paycheck." Claire laughed humorlessly. "Yeah, because pretending to be someone I'm not sounds like a dream come true." "I'm not asking you to change who you are," Damien said. "Just to play a role for a few months. And in return, your family's future is secure." Claire opened her mouth to argue, but the weight of his offer pressed on her. The idea of finally being free from the crushing debt and giving Jake a real shot at success was almost too tempting to resist. "I need time to think about it," she said finally. "Take all the time you need," Damien replied, handing her a sleek business card. "But don't take too long. My parents are expecting answers soon." That night, Claire sat at her tiny kitchen table, staring at the card. Jake was asleep in the next room, his schoolbook still scattered across the couch where he'd been studying. She thought about her father, the man who had always worked tirelessly to provide for her and Jake, even as his health deteriorated. She thought about the pile of unpaid bills sitting on her counter and the scholarship Jake needed but couldn't afford. The deal was insane, but it could solve everything. The next morning, Damien was sitting in his office when his phone buzzed. He picked it up, surprised to see Claire's name on the screen. "Hello?" "It's Claire," she said, her voice steady. "I'll do it, but I have conditions." "I'm listening," Damien said, leaning back in his chair. "No physical stuff unless absolutely necessary, no getting involved in my personal life, and no surprises," Claire said firmly. "Done," Damien agreed without hesitation. "And one more thing," Claire added. "The second this starts to feel like it's crossing a line, I'm out." "Fair enough," Damien said. "Welcome to the team." As he ended the call, a small smile tugged at his lips. Claire had no idea what she was getting into, but neither did he. For the first time in years, Damien felt a spark of anticipation, as if this crazy arrangement might just be the beginning of something more. Claire adjusted the strap of her designer gown, feeling more than a little out of place, as she stood beside Damien at her first high-profile event. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and the city's elite, and Claire's every move seemed to be under scrutiny. Damien leaned toward her, his voice low. "Relax. You look perfect." "I feel like I'm wearing someone else's life," Claire muttered through a tight smile, nodding politely to a passing couple. "You'll get used to it," Damien replied, his tone confident. As the evening progressed, Claire's initial discomfort slowly gave way to a grudging admiration for Damien's ease in the spotlight. He navigated conversations with poise, charming his way through introductions while seamlessly keeping Claire by his side. The first real test of their arrangement came during a formal family dinner at the Reeds' estate. Claire sat across from Damien's parents, her every word and gesture under Victoria's icy gaze. "So, Claire," Victoria began, her tone clipped, "what is it you do?" "I work as a waitress," Claire said evenly, refusing to let the disdain in Victoria's expression faze her. "Interesting choice," Victoria said, her lips curving into a faint, condescending smile. Claire set down her glass and met Victoria's gaze directly. "It's honest work, Mrs. Reed. And it's helped me support my family. Not everyone has the luxury of relying on a trust fund." Damien coughed to cover his laugh, clearly impressed by her boldness. Arthur raised an eyebrow but said nothing, while Victoria's smile tightened. Later, as they left the estate, Damien turned to Claire, his grin unguarded. "That was brilliant. I've never seen anyone put my mother in her place like that." "She's not as intimidating as she thinks," Claire replied with a smirk, though her heart was still racing from the confrontation. Their next challenge came from the tabloids. A photo of Damien and Claire leaving the gala appeared in a gossip column the following morning, accompanied by a headline declaring her a gold digger and questioning her intentions. Claire tossed the paper onto the counter in disgust. "Unbelievable. They don't even know me." Damien frowned as he read the article, his jaw tightening. "This is what happens when you're in the spotlight. It's ugly, but it's noise. Ignore it." "Easy for you to say," Claire shot back. "They're not calling you names." Damien's expression softened as he looked at her. "You don't deserve this. I'll handle it." Before Claire could respond, Damien called his publicist, issuing a statement defending Claire and condemning media's treatment of her. When the statement went live, Claire was stunned. "Why would you do that?" she asked. "Because it's the truth," Damien said simply. "And because I won't let anyone treat you like that." For the first time, Claire saw a side of Damien that was protective, even kind. It was a side she hadn't expected, and it left her feeling both grateful and confused. The turning point came during a weekend charity event at a sprawling vineyard. After hours of mingling, Damien and Claire slipped away from the crowd, seeking a moment of quiet. They found themselves in a secluded garden, the soft glow of fairy lights casting a warm ambience over the space. "I needed a break from all that," Claire admitted, sitting on a stone bench. Damien sat beside her, loosening his tie. "You're not the only one." For a while they sat in silence, the distant hum of the party fading into the background. "Why do you let them control you?" Claire asked suddenly. Damien glanced at her, surprised. "Who?" "Your parents," Claire said. "You're a grown man, Damien. Why let them dictate your life?" He sighed, leaning back against the bench. "It's complicated. My father built this empire from nothing. He expects me to carry it forward, to live up to his legacy. But sometimes I feel like I'm losing myself in the process." Claire studied him, her usual sharpness softening. "You don't have to be him, you know. You can build something of your own, something that actually makes you happy." Damien smiled faintly. "You make it sound easy." "It's not," Claire said, "but it's worth it." Her words hung in the air, a quiet truth that neither of them could deny. Damien turned to her, his gaze lingering. "You're not what I expected," he said softly. "Neither are you," Claire admitted, her heart skipping a beat as his eyes searched hers. Before she could think, Damien leaned in and kissed her. This time there was no audience, no ulterior motive. The kiss was slow, deliberate, filled with emotion neither of them fully understood yet. When they pulled apart, Claire stared at him, her cheeks flushed. "Damien." "I'm sorry," he said quickly, his voice low. "I didn't mean to." Claire stood abruptly, her emotions swirling. "We agreed on boundaries. Don't cross them." Damien nodded, guilt flashing across his face. "You're right. I'm sorry." Without another word, Claire walked away, leaving Damien alone in the garden, questioning what he had just done and what it meant. The soft hum of conversation filled the grand library of the Reed estate, where Victoria Reed sat across from Damien in a high-backed leather chair. A fire crackled in the ornate hearth, but the tension in the room was palpable. Victoria leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "Enough of this nonsense, Damien. When will you end this charade? She's a nobody, and you know it." Damien sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Mother, I've told you before, Claire's not a charade." "Oh please," Victoria scoffed. "Don't insult my intelligence. I know exactly what this is, a desperate attempt to defy us. But you've taken it too far." "It's my life," Damien shot back, his frustration mounting. "Not yours." Victoria's lips thinned. Your life comes with responsibilities, Damien. Ones you can't shirk because of some misplaced rebellion. Damien stood abruptly, his voice low and sharp. I know. It was never meant to last. Unbeknownst to them, Claire had walked into the hall outside the library, carrying a tray of coffee. She paused, the sound of Damien's voice drawing her closer. Her heart sank as she caught the words. I'll handle it, Damien continued, pacing the room. But for now, Claire is helping me keep you and Father off my back. Victoria arched an eyebrow. And she's aware of her role in this little game of yours? Damien hesitated. She knows enough. Claire's breath hitched, her hands trembled, and the tray slipped from her grasp, the cups crashing to the floor. Inside the library, Damien and Victoria froze at the sound. Damien was the first to step out, his expression shifting from irritation to shock when he saw Claire standing there, her face pale and her eyes brimming with unshed tears. Claire, Damien started, his voice faltering. Don't, Claire said, her voice trembling. Don't you dare say another word. Claire stormed out of the estate, her heart pounding. Damien caught up with her just as she reached the driveway. Claire, wait, he called, grabbing her arm gently. She spun around, yanking her arm free. So, this was all just a game to you? A way to stick it to your parents? It's not like that, Damien said, his voice desperate. At least not anymore. Not anymore? Claire repeated, her voice rising. So at first I was just your pawn in some ridiculous power struggle. And you didn't think I deserved to know. Claire, listen to me, Damien pleaded. I never meant to hurt you. But you did. Claire snapped, tears spilling down her cheeks. You made me believe. I don't even know what I believed anymore. Damien's chest tightened as he watched the hurt play out on her face. I care about you, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Don't, Claire said, shaking her head. You don't get to say that to me. Not after everything. Damien stepped closer, his tone urgent. Please, just let me explain. There's nothing to explain, Claire cut him off. You used me, Damien, and I let myself get caught up in it like an idiot. You're not an idiot, Damien said firmly. You're the smartest, strongest person I've ever met. Save it, Claire said, turning away. I'm done. That night, Claire packed her things, leaving the apartment Damien had arranged for her. She ignored his calls and texts, determined to put as much distance as possible between herself and the life she had been dragged into. As she sat on the bus heading back to the small apartment she'd once shared with her brother, Claire stared out the window, her mind racing. How did I let this happen, she thought, the weight of Damien's betrayal pressing down on her. She had agreed to the arrangement knowing it was fake, but somewhere along the way it had felt real. And now, that illusion had been shattered. Damien sat alone in his penthouse, the silence deafening. He replayed the confrontation over and over in his mind, the look of betrayal on Claire's face haunting him. She's gone, he said aloud, the words tasting bitter. For the first time, Damien realized just how much Claire had come to mean to him. She had been more than a shield against his parents. She had been a light in a world he hadn't even realized was so dark. And now, because of his lies, she was gone. The penthouse felt emptier than ever. Damien sat by the window, a glass of untouched whiskey in his hand as the city lights twinkled far below. The echoes of Claire's words haunted him, her tear-streaked face a constant in his mind. He had spent years mastering the art of charm, effortlessly navigating the demands of his parents, the media, and the corporate world. But with Claire, it had been different. She had seen through his defenses, her sharp wit and unrelenting honesty, leaving him exposed in a way that no one else had ever dared. And now, she was gone. For the first time in his life, Damien felt the weight of his actions pressing down on him. It wasn't just regret, it was the painful realization that he had fallen in love with her and had let his lies destroy everything. Claire, meanwhile, was rebuilding. Back in her old neighborhood, she poured her energy into starting a community initiative in honor of her late father. The project focused on providing music lessons and mentorship for underprivileged children, combining her love of music with her desire to make a difference. The work was cathartic. It gave her purpose and a sense of pride she hadn't felt in years. Slowly, word spread about her initiative, and local businesses began offering support. You're amazing, you know that? Her brother Jake said one evening, as they painted a classroom in the small community center. Claire smiled, ruffling his hair. I'm just trying to help. Dad would have done the same. Jake's grin widened. He'd be proud. Damien first learned about Claire's project from an article in a local newspaper. The accompanying photo showed her standing in front of a rundown building, surrounded by smiling children. The caption read, "Claire Bennett brings music and hope to her neighborhood." His heart clenched as he read about her efforts, the passion and determination in her words leaping off the page. "You never stop surprising me," he murmured, tracing her picture with his finger. It was then that he made a decision. On the day of the initiative's official launch, Claire was busier than ever. The small building had been transformed into a vibrant community center, and the children were eagerly preparing for their first recital. Local supporters and families filled the space, their excitement palpable. As the event began, Claire took the stage to thank everyone for their contributions. She spoke from the heart, her voice steady even as emotions threatened to overwhelm her. "This project isn't just about music," she said. "It's about creating a space where kids can dream, grow, and feel seen. It's about giving back to the community that gave me so much." The crowd erupted into applause, and Claire stepped back, relieved yet proud. Just as she was about to leave the stage, a familiar voice filled the room. "Excuse me, everyone," Damien said, stepping onto the stage with a microphone in hand. Claire froze, her heart racing as she stared at him. Damien turned to the audience, his expression sincere. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to say something about this incredible woman standing beside me." The room grew quiet, all eyes on them. "Claire Bennett is one of the most extraordinary people I've ever met," Damien began. "She taught me what it means to care, to fight for something real. Her strength, her kindness, and her unwavering belief in others inspire everyone around her, including me." Claire's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she stayed rooted to the spot, her emotions a whirlwind. Damien took a breath, his voice trembling slightly. "I was a fool to let her go, but I'm here now, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I'm not the man she thought I was." The crowd murmured softly, their eyes shifting between Claire and Damien. "I also have a small announcement," Damien continued. "In honor of Claire's vision, I've partnered with local organizations to expand this project. Starting today, the Bennett Music and Community Center will have the funding and resources to open 2 more locations in the city." Gasps and applause filled the room as Claire stared at Damien in disbelief. He turned to her, his voice soft but firm. "You deserve the world, Claire. I just want the chance to help you build it." After the event, Damien found Claire in the small garden behind the center. She stood alone, her arms crossed as she stared at the fading sunlight. "You had no right to do that," she said without turning around. "I know," Damien replied, stepping closer. "But I had to. You mean too much to me to let you go without a fight." Claire turned to face him, her eyes searching his. "Why, Damien? Why now?" "Because I love you," he said simply. "And because I finally understand what it means to put someone else first." Claire's breath hitched, her walls trembling under the weight of his words. "You hurt me," she whispered. "I know," Damien said, his voice breaking. "And I'll spend the rest of my life making it right, if you'll let me." Claire looked at him for a long moment, her heart torn between hope and fear. "I need time," she said finally. Damien nodded, his expression resolute. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." As he walked away, Claire's emotions swirled. The decision was hers to make, but for the first time in a long time, she felt the faint stirrings of something she thought she'd lost trust. The soft hum of laughter and piano music filled the Bennett Music and Community Center. Claire sat alone in one of the quiet practice rooms, her sketchbook open on her lap. She'd been doodling idly, her thoughts far from the page. It had been weeks since Damien's grand gesture, and though she hadn't given him a definitive answer, he had kept his word, no pressure, no pushing. Instead, he quietly supported the center, staying out of the spotlight while ensuring everything they needed was in place. She thought about the man who had once seemed so shallow, driven only by his own desires. The Damien she knew now was different, vulnerable, genuine, and deeply committed to doing right by her. Claire smiled faintly, her heart warming at the memory of his heartfelt speech. He had risked everything for her, and that realization was impossible to ignore. Months later, the community center buzzed with life as the children prepared for their holiday recital. Claire moved through the crowd, helping a young girl adjust her violin while her brother Jake organized the sound equipment. "Claire," Jake called. "There's someone here to see you." Claire turned, her brow furrowing when she saw Damien standing by the door. He was dressed casually, but there was a nervous energy about him that made her stomach flutter. "What's he doing here?" she muttered to herself before making her way over. "Damien," she greeted cautiously. "What's going on?" He smiled, his hands tucked in his pockets. "Can I borrow you for a minute?" Claire hesitated but nodded. He led her to the main auditorium, where the lights had been dimmed. The stage was empty, save for a single spotlight shining on the center. "What is this?" Claire asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. Damien turned to face her, his expression soft but serious. "I've been waiting for the right moment, and I think this is it." Claire's heart skipped as Damien dropped to one knee, pulling out a small velvet box. "Claire Bennett," he began, his voice steady despite the obvious emotion in his eyes. "That kiss changed my life forever. I thought I was saving myself, but you saved me. You showed me what it means to care, to fight for something real, and to believe in someone, even when they don't believe in themselves." Claire's breath caught, tears already forming in her eyes. "I don't want to waste another day without you," Damien continued. "You've made me a better man, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you. Claire Bennett, will you marry me? For real this time?" Claire laughed softly through her tears, wiping her cheek with the back of her hand. "Yes," she said, her voice shaking. "But only if you promise no more drama." Damien chuckled, slipping the ring onto her finger. "Deal." The children and staff, who had been peeking from the wings, erupted into cheers as Damien stood, pulling Claire into a tight embrace. Their wedding was held a few months later in the very community center Claire had built. It was simple and heartfelt, filled with the people who mattered most, friends, family, and the children whose lives had been touched by Claire's work. Jake walked Claire down the aisle, beaming with pride as he handed her off to Damien, who couldn't take his eyes off her. "You look incredible," Damien whispered as they stood before the officiant. "And you clean up pretty well yourself," Claire teased, her smile radiant. The ceremony was a blend of laughter and tears, their vows filled with promises of love, partnership, and new beginnings. As the evening wound down, Damien and Claire shared their first dance under a canopy of fairy lights strung across the auditorium. The room glowed with warmth, the laughter and music creating a perfect backdrop for the moment. "You know," Claire said, leaning into Damien as they swayed to the music, "I never imagined my life would turn out like this." "Neither did I," Damien admitted. "But I wouldn't change a thing." Claire looked up at him, her eyes shining. "That kiss may have started as a lie, but it brought me the truest thing I've ever known." Damien smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt that." As they danced, surrounded by the people they loved, it was clear that their journey, filled with missteps, heartbreak, and redemption, had led them to something extraordinary. They had found love, not in spite of their differences, but because of them. And as the music played on, their future stretched before them like an unwritten song, full of promise and harmony. As Damien and Claire share their first dance under the soft glow of the lights, their story reminds us that love can begin in the most unexpected ways. What started as a lie turned into something real, built on trust, growth, and redemption. If this story touched your heart, please like the video and share it with someone who believes in second chances and true love. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another heartwarming tale like this one. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story that's sure to inspire and move you.